Welcome to episode number 56 of the Krackle Comics Weekly comic book podcast show where we review comics. I'm Mike, and I'm joined with Dan, and Ginger Dan is back. And I feel like this is the first time you've been here since the Christmas episode, but I also feel like you weren't on the Christmas episode, and I just have a terrible memory because all these shows blur together.
I'll be honest, I forgot about the Christmas show until you mentioned it.
I mean, I also could have just gone back. Yep, 3 months ago, but I could have just gone back and looked. Didn't. But gentlemen, how are we with this? How are we this week?
I'm good. Hanging in there. Work is busy.
Okay.
Just doing fine over here. Nothing great, nothing terrible.
We'll state it. Ginger Dan's taking the time on his birthday to fill in for Vince this week.
Yeah, sure.
So thank you. Happy birthday to Ginger Dan.
How old are you, Ginger Dan?
That is some classified information. I'm not going to be able to tell you that. The answer is too old, but I'm still younger than you, so I guess that's okay.
All right. With that, I think it's also just fitting that Ginger Dan is here because whenever we hang out, Keanu Reeves is somehow tangentially always involved. And once again, didn't plan it this way, but and Dan will talk about the book, but Keanu Reeves and Matt Kindt's BRZRKR finally released. It was delayed a few times and it finally came out. But obviously, the book stars and is co-written by Keanu Reeves. So, Dan, you want to start off our show?
Yeah. So, as Mike alluded to, our first issue is BRZRKR. Number 1, written by Keanu Reeves and Matt Kindt, with art by Ron Garney. Which everyone, all you key issue people out there, should run out and go get, because I guess I saw a news article that Keanu wants to make a movie of this issue or the series already, and then we're only one issue into the book. So yeah, get your copy while you still can. Anyways, our story opens to a man sitting on a bench in the pouring rain who conveniently looks a lot like Keanu Reeves, and then proceeds to have a flashback to him leading an ambush of a military installation with a bunch of soldiers. We get some really cool action scenes, kind of falling out of the sky, storming like this compound and looking for this guy, the president, I guess they're looking for. They're in like a Spanish-speaking country. Turns out that they can't find him, so obviously they've intimidate one guy into telling them where he went. Guess he's heading to the airport to leave the country. So this guy, this Keanu Reeves looking character, he takes over a truck and does a little Matrix thing, dodging a bullet at one point. It looks like he actually gets part of his nose shot off as well, so that's a little gross. Turns out the guy finds the president in a plane and kills him. During this whole sequence, we also get what seems to be a dialogue between the patient, which is the man, and a doctor on how much he can actually remember of his life, while he's also kind of being like pieced back together after this like battle. Like this whole like mission has really like made him like basically torn apart now. He's kind of like in shambles and bleeding everywhere. Also, that's another thing. There's a lot of blood flying around in this issue, so definitely not the most kid-friendly book to read, obviously. Turns out that this man was actually born 80,000 years ago and is being used as this kind of like weapon for some form of military operation. So we don't really get a lot of context or information here in this issue, but the twist at the end definitely has me hooked to stay on and keep reading this. And honestly, really, really good art going on here by Ron Garney. I thought, some of the action scenes were really cool, very gruesome, but didn't really feel too messy or too hard to visualize, I guess, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is a really cool debut issue, and we'll definitely be sticking around for number. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I liked it. Opening with sad Keanu meme is something that's always fun. There's a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Keanu references to other things, like you said, the Matrix thing. There's some Spawn in this for me, particularly when he gets his nose blown off. He kind of looks like Spawn a little bit when he got the batarang to the face and his face was all messed up. But also, like, Al Simmons' face is already all messed up because he's all scarred and burned up. So you have that going on there. Also, you know, Al Simmons was like this military wetworks guy, which this Keanu character is. The hyperviolence is definitely something that makes this book look like it was like right out of, you know, 1993 Image. So that, which is an interesting take on it. Ron Garney's good art here is really good. I feel he kind of is starting to look a little bit like John Romita Jr. and his pencils a little bit, but still great. Obviously not, still better than what John Romita Jr. is now. But no, I like this. I'm wondering, Joe, how much of this is just like Keanu just giving Matt Kindt an overline, and Kindt writes more into it. I am curious to see what the collaborative process between both of them is, because it seems Matt Kindt is like always writing at least like 3 things at once. He always has a book going. He's a very busy man. But overall, no, I like this, and I'll stick around for the second issue.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed this book. Kind of adding on at least a little bit to Dan's exposition and what was happening within the book. I found it kind of interesting that this man, totally not Keanu, you know, he tells the doctor lady straight up, you know, like, I'm immortal, so I'm a god. What else would I be? I think that's kind of an interesting point of view for him to have for himself. And I guess it should kind of be noted, he's working with this military organization with the explicit purpose that he thinks this doctor is going to find a way to kill him finally, and he just wants to die. So I think that's neat. We've already talked about the art a ton. Really good. He beats one guy up with another guy's rib at some point. And for me personally, whenever I go back and read this eventually, probably in trade because I'm that type of guy, I will be very interested to see, you know, how this story pans out, how the characters develop. And personally, just because I like history and historical stuff, I kind of hope they have a lot of flashbacks to not Keanu's life, and it isn't just set solely in the present.
Yeah, that's something to bring up. I think there definitely is a chance that it definitely will, you know, flash in and out of time, especially with a character that we've already established has been around for such a long period, which gives you, you know, a lot of devices to work and play around with too. And also opens up like the backdoor for sequels like BRZRKR, but it's all in like medieval times, for example. But do we have anything else to talk about for BRZRKR? If not, we'll move on.
No, I mean, I just want to touch on the fact that you mentioned that his art looked like Romita Jr. Yeah, I could definitely see that, like late 90s, 2000s Romita. It looked very similar to that. Like some of the close-up shots definitely remind me of that. I was trying to think who it reminded me of, and I'm like, that makes sense. So,
yeah, it looks a lot like, exactly right in that wheelhouse of time for him. But I mean, John Romita Jr. does draw a few pages of this next book that we're going to talk about, which is the big release for DC, Infinite Frontier #0, which, oh boy, we have tons and tons of teams on this. Our framing and main story is Joshua Williamson, Scott Snyder, James Tynion, with art by John Timms. Justice League's Brian Michael Bendis and David Marquez. Batman, James Tynion IV, Jorge Jimenez. Wonder Woman, Becky Cloonan, Michael W. Conrad, Aletha Martinez, and Mark Morales. Wonder Girl is just Joelle Jones, writing and art. Green Lantern, Alan Scott, James Tynion IV, Stephen Byrne. Teen Titans Academy, Tim Sheridan, Rafa Sandoval, and Jordi Tarragona. Superman, Philip Kennedy Johnson, Jamal Ingle. Green Arrow and Black Canary was Joshua Williamson with Alex Maleev. Stargirl was Jeff Johns and Todd Knock. Green Lanterns was Jeffrey Thorne and Dexter Soy. The Flash with Joshua Williamson and Howard Porter. Epilogue by Joshua Williamson and John Romita Jr. So Joshua Williamson all over this book, and we're still wondering what exactly he's going to be doing later on. We saw that he will be writing Robin Damian Wayne, and that starts this week in Batman 106 in the backup feature, but we didn't read that. But his hand is all over crafting the future of DC as they enter their new kind of next status quo, line-wide reboot, relaunch, whatever you want to call it, with the Infinite Frontier. So the next chapter of the DC Universe does begin here, spinning out of the events of Dark Knight's death metal. We're going to embark on that brave, bold new journey that is dubbed the Infinite Frontier, as we saw that the DCU now has what's called an omniverse, and that is ever constantly changing instead of just simply the multiverse. The framing here, though, is following Wonder Woman being tasked with the choice to join the higher beings in the DCU, like Spectre and Phantom Stranger. I think like Highfather is there, one of the Guardians. They dub themselves part of the Quintessence, as they basically take her on a tour of all the status quos of this new DC universe, where we see Batman dealing with the fallout of Joker War, as Tynan is setting up Scarecrow as his big new bad guy. Joker's escaped Arkham, which is and he killed Bane. That's going to set up the Joker ongoing. Batman's no longer trusted by the GCPD, and that Mayor Nakano guy is now fully mayor of Gotham. Superman is seeing Black Adam possibly going straight, as he's shown footage of him helping those in need, which is going to set up Bendis' Justice League. Nubia takes over ruling Themyscira in absence of Diana, and Hippolyta is going to Brazil to investigate the girl known as Yara Flor, who we saw in Future State. Alan Scott comes out to his children. We acknowledge his history in the JSA and his children in Infinity Inc., which was cool. He's also taking back his Sentinel code name that he had from the 90s, and he's being asked to join that like totality team that we saw at the end of Death Metal, which is going to like watch and observe the different happenings and chaos in the Omniverse. Titans Academy is being set up, but only gets like 3 pages devoted to it. The Superman segment, it really centers on John Kent and showcases that he's kind of basically a child of none of these worlds. And to me, it acknowledged that there's kind of problems with this character now, and we have to figure out what exactly his place in history is going to be, with now the hint of the possible future where he might be like a tyrant and a bad guy down the line. But for now, he's a good dude, but he's someone to watch out for. So we're going to give some sort of dimension to John here, and I kind of like where they're going to go with it. Dinah and Ollie are back together and waiting to regain their memories, which that's another thing from this. Everyone's going to basically regain their memories, and some characters can possibly just come back from the dead. We don't know all the ones that are going to be those yet, but we do know that it's going to be Roy Harper being one of them, because they get a call, but the call is canceled, and we see it's a resurrected Roy Harper, who now he throws out his hat and picks up a red bow and a red arrow, and he's like, I guess I'll call my Titans buddies again. So that's a setup there. Jeff Johns writes a Stargirl story setting up the return of the Seven Soldiers with Stripesy. John Stewart and Simon Baz are bringing Teen Lantern to Oa for the first time for the Guardians to figure out what exactly to do with her. And also, and basically sets up that maybe Simon and John are going to be the main lanterns for the Green Lantern Corps on Earth. I guess there's a passing mention that Guy, Hal, and Kyle are all going to be like off planet right now. But last is the Flash story, which Barry basically gives the reins to Wally, and he's like, hey, you're the Flash now. I'm going to go join and leave. I'm going to go join up with the totality and go, fight the other stuff that's going on in the Omniverse. Cool. I'm fine with this. Wally West, I think, this is a move that's been long overdue. Also, let's get rid of hopefully that Wally costume and give him back his classic one that we saw in Speed Metal. The epilogue, though, sees Diana refusing to join the offer of the Quintessence, and basically is like, you showed me all this other cool shit that's going on. I want to go be part of this brave new DC universe. So she gets her new costume, and I guess she's going to Valhalla or something to fight Vikings. I'm curious to see what this Becky Cloonan Wonder Woman book's going to be about, but I'm down for it. And then finally, on Earth Omega, Darkseid has been reborn and seems to kill the Quintessence, redubbing himself the End of All Things, which sets him up again as the big bad in the DC universe. So after all of that, guys, what do we think about the giant one-shot? Did we enjoy it? And Dan back.
Oh, good. Yeah. We have 2 Dans again. The status quo
is out for some reason.
But at least for me, so I don't keep up with comics like the weeks they come out. So I like get a couple occasional inklings of things that are going on from like you guys and other friends. In general, a lot of this was very confusing, but it makes me hopeful and probably soon to be disappointed by the future of DC Comics. I have a bunch of eclectic thoughts because this was a very eclectic issue. But so if Dan, if you want to talk about some stuff first before I just start firing into random questions and thoughts, go for it.
I mean, if you're confused, then I think you can only imagine how confused I am with some of this stuff. Let's just say all I can hope for is that this is better than Future State, which I think it will be, because I mean, Future State was kind of just like a tie-over thing to get us to this point. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what much to say. I mean, it was nice to read. I mean, the art was really good in a lot of these stories. There's just, it kind of leaves me with a lot more questions than answers. But I don't know.
Now be honest, Dan. How many of these characters did you know?
Not a lot.
If you knew anyone in the Stargirl story, I would actually be impressed.
Yeah, exactly. So this is probably not
the
best.
Hey, Green Arrow was there with the 7 soldiers for like a page.
Oh, you're right. Green Arrow and Speedy are on there for like a panel.
Yeah. So I know those people somewhat vaguely, but that's it. So, yep. This is a good excuse that I can actually use the reason like I don't know these characters that well to actually use in this case. So, there.
I don't think it is, because most of the stories are heavy hitters.
Yeah, I think Stargirl is probably the most obscure one at this point. That or Alan Scott's.
I would say it's more Alan Scott, because one of them has a TV show.
You're not wrong. Either way, I guess I'll just barrel straight into my random thoughts.
Okay.
So I'm hoping this isn't a precursor of things to come, but in that, I guess it was the Justice League story where Superman's like, oh, Black Adam's doing good? That's cool. And, he's all for it because he's Superman, which is nice. But the people of the town or city or whatever was like, Shazam saved us. And I'm like, you best not be calling this man Shazam, because like
that was just for this. It's not sticking.
It better. The fact that it came about for this, the fact that it exists, period, kind of infuriates me. Like, more than one person had to think that was an okay idea. And like,
I mean, that was a Bendis idea.
Yeah, it's fair. I'm just of the opinion that like calling anyone in the Marvel family Shazam that isn't the wizard himself is just, it makes you think too much, and it annoys me that it happened because DC probably thought its readers couldn't think enough. Whatever. I'm happy it will die.
Yeah, I just thought that story was weird because that's the Justice League story, but it doesn't really do anything to set up Justice League.
I'll be honest, I thought it was a Superman story for like the entirety of reading it. Like, I just didn't pay too much attention to the credits. I was like, oh, there's a Superman story somewhere, and oh, there's a Justice League story somewhere. And then after I finished, I was like, was that the Justice League one? Either way. I don't know if Scarecrow's design, or at least the design he has in this, was shown before, but I'm really digging it. I kind of love the
it's a new one
vibe he has going on. Let's see. They teased Red X with the, I guess, Titans Academy story, which at first
that was a Future State thing.
Yeah, right. I do remember hearing about that. At first, I was like, "Yo, Red X, that's gonna be cool." And then I remembered that this was comics and not the 2003 Teen Titans TV show. And then I thought, I don't know if they can make this work. So
exactly.
I don't think I will closely follow this whatsoever, but it'll be interesting seeing at some point or another how it all plays out.
That book's going to be weird because it's crossing over immediately with Suicide Squad. So I'm really wondering how those books are going to function.
We'll see. Moving more to like Amazonian type stuff. I think it's really cool that Nubia is going to be the queen of the Amazons now. I like that she's getting her time, since everyone that's been a Wonder Woman gets to lead Themyscira at some point or another. It does kind of make me question what's Artemis up to these days. Like, she's still like with the Outlaws or whatever she was doing. She just non-existent, maybe.
Couldn't tell you.
Cool. Glad everyone else at DC knows as much about Artemis's current whereabouts as I do. But kind of playing into that, and this is, again, probably, this might be a factor of me not reading Future State, or maybe this is just something they're about to figure out. When the Amazons talk about Yara Flor, they call her like that girl from the other tribe. Is that in reference to Bana Migdal, or is this like, oh, there's actually a third branch of Amazons now?
I think it's the former, but we haven't truly gone much into her origins yet. We just saw her as Wonder Woman in Future State, and then this series will be Wonder Girl, where we're going to focus on her origins and upbringing a little bit.
Okay. That's what it kind of seemed like, because it seemed like it set up her going back to Brazil, which it's insinuated that her family left at some point for some reason or another when she was young. So
yeah,
I guess they're still delving into what that exactly means. I just wasn't sure if there was something like in the Future State books or elsewhere where they mentioned like, oh, it's this tribe and that's why they call her the other tribe, but it's whatever. The cosmic staff is like sentient in the comics now, right? Like, that wasn't a thing before this issue.
No, that's a thing for the TV show too.
Right. Synergy. That was why I brought that up. Good TV show though, so I guess maybe it'll be interesting. We'll see. And then my final rambling thought. Why does DC hate John Kent?
You can ask Brian Bendis that.
Yeah, I guess that's effectively the same question right now.
Well, Philip Kennedy Johnson, he won us over with his writing on his Future State book for Superman.
Mm-hmm.
But he said he wasn't going to undo anything that Bendis did. So
that doesn't necessarily. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I think you can salvage this character from what's been done to him so far and have him have a good path. But this is just one of those things we're going to have to see where it goes. I just don't fully understand why they can just be like, oh yeah, he's a good kid, and then like leave it at that.
Yeah, like, well, that's the whole deal.
Be evil, but like he never show anything of it. And I mean, it makes a case for it with, it shows, like, oh, he was raised here, and then he went here and did this with his evil granddad person, and then he got attacked and captured or whatever by his fake dad, who was also evil, and then he grew up 1,000 years after he was born. It's like, okay, I get it. He's had a messed up life, but like, why do you have a messed up life in the first place? And why does he have to still be bad? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Little rant. Rant.
I mean, it's a fair criticism, and that's the deal with it, is that DC has written themselves in a corner with this character that was really popular and then just threw him off a cliff. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's kind of a cliched thing to do, right? Like, we've now have the ideal thing of what if Superman's son were to go bad, and that's going to be the great mystery of what is John Kent's role in Infinite Frontier. Because now he's back on Earth. He's not with the Legion now. That's over. And everything else in his life has been kind of an aged up, mixed up mess. And he, like, I did like how they alluded to, like, he wasn't even born on the Earth that he was born on the Convergence Earth during Flashpoint.
Yeah, he was born on this Earth.
He's a child of
Earth, and now we're on a third Earth. Like, he's on a third different Earth. So that is an interesting point to bring up. And the plot idea or probable point that we're moving towards of what happens if Superman has an evil kid is an interesting thing to think about, and would be an interesting thing to read. I don't know, personally, I don't know if I like it for mainstream John. I feel like that would almost work better as like an Elseworlds, which they can do now.
Yeah, that's the thing. Literally, one of the Earth stand is labeled the Elseworld, so that's where And they literally got a line about it where it's like it's a universe where everything is constantly ever changing, so they can just throw everything in there on that one. But
right.
I got. What was that?
Sorry, I just remembered the actual last thought I had. In the Flash story, we see Barry join Justice Incarnate, which is basically the Justice League of various multiverses, and their goal is, or what they're going to do is, map the multiverse or try to, and like visit these worlds and stuff. Are we getting a book on that, or is that just like, yeah, here's where Barry's going to be? Because I would like.
They have not announced one yet.
I think that could be a very cool.
Yeah, book. They haven't announced one yet, but it would be cool. I think that's. I mean, and also look for Joshua Williamson to possibly write that one too. Yeah, with the way they've laid, like this is the third time they've heavily laid groundwork on that, so we'll see how it transpires.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool and could basically be Marvel's missed opportunity with post Secret Wars Fantastic Four.
Yeah, they can definitely take a page out of that with that thing. I'm just happy to have Wally back, and we'll see how quickly it goes to hell. But with that, I know Dan's been waiting very patiently to talk about Fear Case number 2.
Yeah, I guess I'll talk about it. So, our next issue is Fear Case number 2, written by Matt Kindt, art by Tyler Jenkins, colors by Hilary Jenkins. So the two detectives, again, are still searching for this fear case when they end up at a hotel with a dead woman in a shower wrapped up in what seems to be intestines or something. I'm not sure. And we also see a bunch of names written in blood on a hotel room wall. On the hotel room wall, excuse me. The two detectives then get to talking about who they would give the fear case to. So, like, over, I guess, a casual cup of coffee at a diner, they're talking about this. Their travels take them to the sister of the woman who was killed, and she states that she was mailed the fear case and that she sent it to her stepfather, who sent it across the street to these neighbors, where their son, Mateo, took the fear case and escaped with it and was able to get away from the detectives using a bike. So kind of leaves the detectives in another dead end a little bit. One of them swearing they saw him holding the fear case. So the two detectives head back to the station to file the report and are even more frustrated than ever. So I guess just to bring, I don't know, am I the only one who read this week? I think I was. But anyways, this is a really cool second part of the story. I'm definitely going to read the third issue. This is shaping up to be kind of like a cool little thriller, mystery, crime thing going on. So interested to see where it goes. Again, the artwork here, Tyler Jenkins and Hilary Jenkins art in colors, like the kind of like watercolor-esque like look here, I think is pretty appropriate for this issue. Especially the scene where we see the dead woman in the shower, definitely utilizing those colors and art style in a very interesting way there. But yeah, Fear Case number 2, definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't already. But yeah, that's it.
For Demon Days, X-Men, writer and art here by Peach Momoko. This is the first of what I guess is going to be a series of one-shots where the Marvel Universe is reimagined in the forms of Japanese folklore adapted by Peach Momoko, who serves as the writer and artist for this series. Zach Davison is providing the English translation here in the credits page. But so Psylocke, going by Psy, is wandering the lands with her wolf companion named Logan, looking for work and help, where she runs into Suki, who's Danny Moonsar, and helps her village fend off the evil Orochi, or Great Snake, which in this case is a giant venom snake. So it's just a giant snake that also is covered in a venom symbiote. So they also get the help of the Red Oni, which is like who's going by Hulk Maru or Red Hulk because he's red. And we also see Juju, who is Jubilee, but here as a Japanese goddess. So they all kind of team up to defeat the giant venom snake and save their village because they're people and starving or can't get food. Really simple, like folklore tales adapted here and a different lens for the Marvel viewers. And the page is provided for deeper information in the back of what exactly each character is based off of, where Momoko is taking inspiration from. The art here, though, just breathtakingly beautiful art, which maybe this is the most beautiful looking book I read this week, with just how great each brushstroke and then the coloring, the watercolors. It's just beautiful to look at. I don't know if I'm going to read the next one, which is Demon Days Mariko, but as a one-off for me, this was pretty good and worth looking at just for the art.
Another Dan bites the dust. But luckily, this Dan did read Demon Days X-Men #1 and can talk about it until he's back. So I also enjoyed this issue, and like you said, Mike, this art was just like very beautiful. And a few times, even though I haven't read this series too much, or the series that I thought it looked like, it kind of, some of the scenes like really oddly reminded me of Usagi Yojimbo. And I thought that was like kind of neat. I understand it's probably just a stylistic thing with, you know, Japanese art and culture and such like that. But it was pretty neat. It was a very neat little story, very self-contained, as you would expect from a one-shot. It looks like it might lead into somewhat of an arc, with at least this next one being called Demon Days Mariko. Presumably it's going to be about her, who was at the end of this story reading a comic book that was the story we just read, which was neat because like 3 pages into this, I thought, oh, this kind of reminds me of Kitty's fairy tale or whatever that she tells Ileana in like Uncanny 170 whatever. And I was like, oh, that's neat. And then at the end I was like, oh, it is a story that someone's just reading. So I thought that was kind of cool, except Logan the Wolf showed up in real life maybe, so maybe there's something more to this. But it was odd, and it's definitely one of those things where you're just going to have to read more to figure out what the plan is. Like, not enough was seated here to be able to theorize, at least to my simple mind. But
I like that they're all going to be one-shots, and if they're all handled in this fashion where you just need to read one and get a complete story, but if you want to keep reading, it goes deeper. I think that's the best case to do with these, because they're fun. They definitely were fun. Yeah,
this is definitely something, you know, whenever they put out a trade of like these collected one-shots, which I would assume they do if there's enough one-shots, I would definitely be interested in this, because beautiful art, if nothing else. And I mean, personally, you know, a lot of the Japanese stuff in here was pretty cool to see. I don't know too much about Japanese history or culture, but, you know, there was like a lore page at the very end of the book, which was like, here's like the actual historical or, you know, mythical inspirations for these specific characters, or like how it actually fit into Japanese society back in, you know, 1100 something. And I thought that was really neat. Stuff like that is always really cool to me. I love learning new things, and this is one of those things that very easily facilitates that, because it gives you a story of like, all right, here's how they fit within this story that's based off some actual, you know, folktale, and then here's like a slightly more textbook definition of what these were and what they did, and like how they are viewed in, you know, Japanese society or culture even. And I don't know, this is just an interesting way of injecting even more Japanese culture into Western comics audiences.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, all the character changes were really inventive too. Like just having Green be the lone wolf, which is an animal we've seen him next to for years, is really a smart idea. And then Psylocke kind of being like the lone wanderer works really well too. I liked the design for the Jubilee goddess was really fun too. And then also Danny Moonstar is there because she's got her bow and arrow. So I think they were all like, they all made sense for the story too, and all the designs worked.
I also liked how it wasn't explicitly stated that like anyone had actual powers. Like obviously the Hulk is strong, but he's an Oni who is basically an ogre in like more Western sense. So like obviously he's strong. And then, you know, like the only thing that like screamed supernatural to me, or like more than just like an Oni, was the Venom Snake.
Yeah.
And even then, like, you could argue it doesn't have venom powers. It just had a symbiote type dealy. Another neat little kind of thing. I don't think they necessarily did it in changing Psylocke's name, but Danny's Moonstar in this, I think you mentioned, is Suki. That's actually the Japanese word for moon. So I thought that was yeah.
Super
and
well.
Oddly enough, I knew that off the top of my head. Thank you, Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, all right. That's how.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how it all ties in. Okay, that's cool.
So I thought that was neat, just injecting like changing people's names, but making it make sense, and having the connection.
All right. Well, we'll turn it back over to Dan for America Chavez.
Just for the record, Junior Dan, I never left. Mike just threw me backstage. So that's what happens when I don't get to recap a book. He just throws me in the back corner. Anyways, our next issue is America Chavez, Made in the USA, #1, written by Kalinda Vasquez with art by Carlos Gomez. So our story opens in the past 13 years ago on Jones Beach in New York, where we see America's, I guess, her family discovering something on the beach. So we kind of don't see a lot of what's going on. Fast forward to now in Los Angeles, America is working with Kate Bishop to take down a giant mole monster because what else are you going to fight in Los Angeles, I guess? She's also being interviewed by this like blue-haired chick, and America's just like, I can't talk right now. I'm too busy fighting all these mole monsters. So flashback again, we see that America's family found her stranded on Jones Beach and take her as one of their own. So going back to the present here, we find out that Ramon, who was America's girlfriend, comes out of the blue to help with the fight against the moles when America gets knocked out cold. So it turns out that her powers are going in and out. So this was one of those instances where her powers just gave out and she got whacked. So she then heads to her hometown after kind of coming to, she then heads to her hometown to deal with a mysterious force field that's been put around her family's like apartment complex. Along with the help of Spider-Man, she's able to defeat it and save her family, but receives a mysterious note from a person that's threatening her, telling her that she should be watching her family a little more closely. So, for somebody who, I think my only exposure to America is with like Spider-Gwen. I think she was in that series for a little bit. Aside from that, never really have been exposed to her for a lot, but this issue is pretty interesting. Kind of establishes a little bit of her background, kind of brings everyone up to speed on her status quo with being with Ramon, and kind of being on the West Coast with some of the West Coast Avengers, which I'm not sure if that's still a thing anymore, or if that book got canceled too. But yeah, definitely gonna stick around for another issue. Interesting character, really good art here going on by Carlos Gomez. I feel like this art style really fits this book pretty well. But yeah, I don't know who else read this. Mike, you read this?
Yeah, I read this. I liked she's trying to get this young schoolgirl's trying to interview her as she's trying to fight, which is interesting. But to my knowledge, I limited interaction with America Chavez. I've seen her on the different team books that I've read. She also pops in, I think, in Lemire's run on Hawkeye. There's like a story in the future where she's like Captain America. I know it seems that everyone likes this series a lot more than her last series. So take that for what it's worth. This was a pleasant surprise for me. I thought Carlos Gomez's art was good, and I liked that for a character that doesn't have a lot of deep history. I like that we're taking a piece and now carving a deeper aspect to her upbringings and origins, which is definitely interesting. Yeah. And I'm actually going to probably stick with this for at least the second one. I think this is just a mini series, but overall, first time I've read a book where she's the lead, and I did enjoy it. So take that for what it's worth. I thought it was actually one of my more pleasant surprises of the week.
Same.
So going into Nocterra. Nocterra #1, which is Scott Snyder, Tony Daniel, and Tomo Mori on colors. New image series from the longtime DC creators Scott Snyder and Tony Daniel, both known heavily for their Batman work, have teamed up with the colorist Tomo Mori, who also has done Batman, for a new series set with a post-apocalyptic setting. 13 years ago, the big PM happened, where the sun went out, and if you're left in the dark for 10 or more hours, a virus sets into your gums and then to your bone, turning into like this hellish night creature. Val Riggs, or her call sign Sundog, works as kind of a convoy driver where she goes and transports various goods from outpost to outpost. She also has a foster brother named Emery, and she was adopted and had cataracts, but her parents died in the big PM. So we begin with her finishing a job and see her fight off some monsters, and then is tasked with the next job of transporting an old man and his granddaughter to a place where supposedly the sun shines bright, because he shows off like he's got a sunburn as proof. And then with Val's brother showing the first signs of the virus, because he's got like black gums setting in, she decides to take the sketchy job and hopes that she can save her brother before he fully turns. Ending here is a man named Blacktop Bill has come to Val's station asking who's taken the old man, because he's supposedly responsible for the big PM. Oh no. So they're on the run now and someone's chasing after them. This was fine. Daniel's work here is definitely par for him these days. I wasn't blown away by it. I would say, though, that maybe Snyder needed more edits here, because a lot of this issue is narration boxes with just a lot of exposition and setup and, that show don't tell rule. And he's also filling in as much info in this world as possible. At times it felt like I was reading someone's screenplay or pitch than just a first issue of a comic book. But I'm down with this series. I'm going to give it a second issue, but I think we've all seen this story before, which right now it's like this deal. It's kind of played out for me. We've seen this kind of story before in things like BioShock, The Last of Us, Logan, etc. So maybe there will be some more twists, and I'd bet that there will be down the line for this.
Yeah, so two things come to my mind. It's like, okay, if the sun goes out, why would you get a virus? Like, wouldn't you just freeze to death and die? But I guess that's my own logical understanding of the situation.
It's a comic book, Dan.
Exactly. I can't just be that simple. And two, every time I hear a PM, like the big PM.
Go there.
No, I'm talking about I'm thinking about I'm just thinking about like warehouse operations. Like PM is short for preventive maintenance. So like I'm just thinking about that the whole time I'm reading this, and I'm just like, this is not where I think my mind should be going. But
I will say, I think the big PM is a dumb name.
Yeah, it doesn't really I don't really know what it's supposed to mean or what's supposed to make me feel, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna stick around for the second issue, unfortunately. But I wasn't really a big fan of the art style either. I don't know. It's just not what I'm into, I guess.
I mean, it's Tony Daniel. It's fine. It's
it's fine, but it's not like it didn't really. I don't think it really enhanced the story at all for me.
I don't think Tony Daniel with Tomo Mori is always the best fit. I think there's other colorists and inkers that he works better with. There's been a distinct change ever since the New 52, where Tony Daniel's art changed for me. And I've never really been as much of a fan of it from back when he was like the main Batman artist with Grant Morrison. And I thought R.I.P. was one of the best things he ever did. But you did stick around for Avengers Mech Strike #2.
Yeah. This I'm actually sticking around for third issue. This is like surprising. I mean, I know when Mike first showed me this issue that was coming out, I was like, this will probably be 1 or 2 issues and I'm out. But honestly, Jed McKay, you're doing a good job over there at Marvel, so hopefully they can give you some more good stuff there. But anyways, our next issue is Avengers Mech Strike #2, written by Jed McKay, art by Carlos Magno. So on Avengers Mountain, the Avengers are again continuing the fight against these biomechanoids, which are slowly taking over the world. They're kind of like, basically all these Avengers are going like to these occurrences and killing these biomechanoids, but the more they kill them, the more they multiply. So it's like eventually they were fighting one like every week, and now they're fighting one pretty much every day. So they're trying to Tony and T'Challa are trying to find out where these biomechanoids are coming from. So meanwhile, while that's going on, we see Thor and Black Widow teaming up to take down a biomechanoid. Why Thor needs and keep in mind, all of these heroes have giant mech suits. Why does Thor need a mech suit? I have no idea. I can see why Black Widow might need one, because going up against a giant monster, probably not a good idea just to have her, Widow's bite and stuff like that on her. So yeah, so we see the fight with those. We then see Cap and Hulk. Again, why does the Hulk need a suit of armor to fight against something? No idea why. So we see them taking down some of these creatures. We then see Spider-Man using a really stupid joke, the same one that Poe Dameron used in Rise of Skywalker. And I really hope it was not intentional, because Jed McKay, seriously, why do we have to include that? For you guys that didn't read the book, the joke was Spider-Man was seeing these biomechanoids and he says, "Oh, they fly now." Just like how Poe saw these stormtroopers in Rise of Skywalker flying during the fight in the desert planet, which I can't remember what it was called. Anyways, so Tony and T'Challa are able to find out that they're under attack by Kang. So Kang kind of just shows up through this portal, vaporizes T'Challa. So rest in peace, T'Challa. And then Tony gets in the suit trying to fight him, and then he actually has to escape because Kang turns Avengers Mountain into another giant biomechanoid. And that is where our issue ends. So really high stakes here. For someone who's just getting into reading comics, obviously this might not be the best spot to start, but honestly this requires probably the least amount of background on these characters. Very, very just literally rock'em sock'em robots. But yeah, the part that just drives me nuts is why does Thor and Hulk, why do they need mech suits? They need it because plot. That's why. The plot requires them to. But yeah, I'm sticking around for a third issue, so lit. And I will go into Dead Dog's Bite because neither of my co-hosts read Avengers Mech Strike, so shame on them. But anyways, Dead Dog's Bite #1, written and drawn by Tyler Boss. So our story opens to a man crawling out of a manhole. He is also our narrator, and he takes us back to a place called Pender Mills, where we meet our main character, Josephine, who also goes by Joe. So she's picking up her medication at a pharmacy, where she also gets a carton of milk, where she sees this person, a missing person post on the cart for Cormac Guffin, who apparently is her girlfriend. So later that night, the city gathers to hold a vigil for Cormac, kind of announcing what the updates are on finding her and when she was last seen. So later on, Joe runs into a guy she knew from high school. I think his name is Alan. Oh no, never mind. That's not Alan. She runs into another guy, a jock guy, who makes fun of Cormac missing. To which Joe pulls a gun on him, and Joe's friend Alan shows up, and turns out that the gun is just a water gun, so nothing really to worry about there. The two head off to find Cormac, and they start off at this little hill that all these couples go to make out and stuff. So they show up and they kind of scare this one couple away, and they kind of just sit there talking about Pender Mills and all, basically growing up there and how that's been their whole life so far and all this stuff. And Alan and Joe almost kiss, but they don't. And Alan just drives away. So it makes me wonder, how is Joe getting back to the city? Alan just drove off and he was the only ride she had. So that's a little weird. But we then see the narrator come back and talk about scabs and some other weird metaphorical stuff. And our issue ends. So this seems like it's going to be a missing persons case type of thing, kind of who done it, where is she at, but it does have some, injected humor and some realism to it. So I'm on for another issue for this. This is probably one of the first weeks that's had so many #1s that I've definitely gone like 4 for 4 on pretty much of like wanting to read, except I guess one of them actually. But yeah, this was pretty good. And it's funny, Mike said this is his Dark Horse pick of the week, and turns out it's published by Dark Horse. He didn't even know that. So,
well, I did, but I forgot when I said I didn't mean intentionally punned that way. But
there you go.
No, this is really good. It's kind of got that Twilight Zone vibe with the guy crawling out of the manhole and being our narrator at the beginning. Tyler Boss is definitely playing with different genre conventions with that. I thought Alan was Cormac's girlfriend. I thought that's how, and then she's Cormac is Joe's best friend. I thought that was the relationship between all three of them. We'll wait to go deeper as we get into issue 2, but everything structured here is really good. The art's really good. It's got the kind of the muted style that I like for these stories. And like there's like some dark humor at the beginning of it as well. Like the entire sequence when she's just trying to stand there to get her medication is like really great, where it's just like we've all been in that situation of waiting for something and someone's trying to make a conversation with you that you just don't want to have a conversation with. But also like there's an ineptitude to like the sheriff's deputy, where he's like literally just pasting the photo of the girl on like every carton of milk possible in the store just from like a scrapbook. So it's like this really weird dark humor that kind of draws me in. But no, the character work here is good. I think this is going to be a fun book to follow in 2021. And without further ado, I'll go into King in Black, Wiccan and Hulkling #1, which is by Tini Howard and Luciano Becco. So there's this whole invasion on Earth, and some planets have been obliterated on Null's path to Earth. So where does that leave the new ruler of the Korean Scroll to fit into this? This King in Black one-shot looks to answer that while also serving as a kind of follow-up to the end of Empire. The Shi'ar vice counselor gives Teddy and Billy a vacation honeymoon as they haven't taken one yet. Empire ended with them finally tying the knot. So they're headed to this giant vacation planet where on their beach resort, they get a robot who brings them champagne, which they're really, really into. It's like a running gag throughout the issue. But while they're on the beach, they're attacked by one of Null's like symbiote dragons. So the honeymoon is very short-lived as they have to now spring into action and save people on this planet and get them safely rendezvoused onto bigger ships that can carry them. So it begins kind of a race against time here. And they discover that Wiccan's power is also able to cancel out Null's influence on the different symbiotes too, which they use to their advantage and end up saving the people and one of the Kree warships. So back on their planet, they finally get to have their honeymoon and enjoy the champagne. This was relatively very fun, pretty quick and calm, and played more for laughs compared to the actual King in Black event. But it's tucked into its nice own little corner of the event and doesn't really contradict anything we've seen so far. For its faults, I feel like its pacing is a little stiff as it tended to lag on just a little bit at the end, and could have wrapped up faster. Ginger Dan read this, so what did you think of it?
Basically everything you said. Nice, fun little story. Pacing was a little odd, but not terrible. This was probably my first time reading something specifically about Wiccan and Hulkling. And I've maybe read something where they were in the book before, like maybe like a Secret Invasion or like Secret Invasion tie-in or something or another.
Surprised you haven't read Young Avengers.
I somehow haven't. I'm still not really sure how. It's definitely on a list of get around to at some point. I just need to buy it. But I enjoyed it. I enjoy their dynamic. It was very nice to see both of them, see them interact with each other, see them interact with the kind of straight man accuser lady, and see her grow a little bit. I really enjoyed Hulkling in this, actually. I really liked that he is a very competent and kind of self-assured leader, and I just really liked that. And I don't know if that's been something he's been building to or if that's kind of randomly new here, but I very much enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah, that's something kind of a main component of Empire was him now then like the lead up to him finally taking the throne.
Right. That makes sense then. I feel like a little bad for people that are really into Wiccan and Hulkling, because if they want to like get collected editions or anything, then this is probably going to be a terrible time for them, because they're either going to, I would assume they're either going to be searching for this individual issue, buying an omnibus of this event, or the one random trade that has this and like 7 other completely unrelated stories.
Yeah.
And like this seems like something where if you're into these characters, this is something you're going to need in a way.
Yeah.
But
I'm also wondering, like, because Empire ends with him taking the throne with Wiccan by his side. So they're out in space. I'm assuming Al Ewing has plans for them to be a part of the kind of relaunched Guardians of the Galaxy that's happening soon, because the Guardians team is going to be like 20 members deep. So I know like Super Scrolls on it and stuff. So I imagine they're going to have to factor into that book somehow.
It's possible. The only other kind of comment I have on this book is like, I get there's some kind of event about symbiotes going on that I don't care about because symbiotes. But like, why does it have to be symbiotes?
Because it's like, the symbiote god Null.
Yeah, I don't care. You could replace them with literally any other alien faction that isn't Kree Skrull. Kree Skrull, you could straight up have it be Shi'ar.
Well, that's the last event, so that we can't use them. And before that, it was Asgardians and Dark Elves. So
true, but
they're running out of invading forces.
You're not wrong. I think my main problem is just like symbiotes are fine. I feel like they're been overused for 20 years. But
yeah,
like I feel like this, I don't know if it would have necessarily improved, but I feel like this issue could have been better or more interesting if it just had a different villain in it.
Well, the villain was only like one of the dragons. It wasn't even Null.
No, it's yeah. And to say there's even a villain in this story is kind of a stretch. You're just fighting against you're not even fighting. They just like hold off the forces and then get rid of the symbiotes on their crew.
Yeah.
And again, to me, it's just like, you don't really have a villain here. The whole villains thing is like, oh, Null thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread, so no one else can be any form of leader, so we have to kill you. I was like, could we use someone else?
I mean, to be fair, you haven't read Cates' Venom / King in Black, so, but I'm not.
Sure. I would very much do want to read Cates' Venom at some point.
Yeah.
Is Cates also doing King in Black?
Yes.
Then I'll probably read it eventually. At least as of right now, I just kind of really don't care about Null.
Yeah, and that's, I would have to say the biggest down part of the event is that Null's kind of just an empty void of a big bad character. He's just kind of this just evil king guy. Yeah, he's gonna be, your mileage is gonna vary based on how much you like him, and that's all right. Mm-hmm. But I think we're gonna go into a book I think we all heavily enjoyed, which was, this is actually our first Infinite Frontier book that we're reading on the show. So Batman came out this week and Suicide Squad, but we only read The Swamp Thing #1 by Ram V, Mike Perkins, and Mike Spicer. Perkins on art, Mike Spicer on colors, Ram V writing. And I was correct as we were talking about the lead up to this book. Me and Vince were talking about, was this a new host? This is a new host. A new host of Swamp Thing, Levi Kamei, who's having bad dreams and he can't sleep at night. And at night, he's kind of manifesting himself as Swamp Thing in his sleep, and seems to be he's not in overall control of himself. And he's returning from New Delhi back to New York after the death of his father. And he's staying with his friend, and we get some introspection about his upbringing and lack of relationship with his dad and what does it all mean. But he feels connection to something greater. Meanwhile, in the Sonoran Desert, these officers are looking at this mangled corpse that was destroyed by some sort of nasty creature, and then all of them are trading tales of the Pale Wanderer trying to scare the new guy. But the Pale Wanderer manages to manifest itself while the guys are telling stories of it. And it's like some demon thing that I think is probably part of the Black, which then starts feasting on all these sheriff's deputies while Levi is sleeping. He's like transported and turns into Swamp Thing and encounters this thing, but he's like quickly beaten and thrown out about it. and then he's spit out back in Central Park, and he wakes up, and now Levi's like, what does this all mean? This was really good in terms of an opening issue. I think, to me, this might be DC's Immortal Hulk, depending on how they take this. I'm very excited. That's kind of like my level of ceiling for this. Sadly, it's only going to be 10 issues. I think this definitely is spinning out of some of the things that Ramvi had set up in his Justice League Dark run with, I think Alec Holland is in the UK holding parts of the Green Together, and this is why we have a new host. And overall, I kind of like this new host. I'm excited to see what they do with them. And he's got some different takes on this. But this was, we highly enjoyed his Future State issues, and we're then looking forward to this. So, guys, how did you feel about The Swamp Thing #1?
Well, I'm just glad it's called The Swamp Thing and not Swamp Thing, because this book deserves that extra article.
That it?
That's it. That's all I need to say.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't have a single book of Swamp Thing on my shelf, which I know my co-hosts probably hate me for admitting that, but
we don't. But you did the same writer. This was the same team. You liked the Future State issues, so
yeah. So I think I'll stick on for another issue, but yeah, just to learn more about the character. So
I will be a little more verbose in my discussion of this book. So I, unlike Dan, have a fair amount of Swamp Thing on my shelf. Additionally, I did not read the 2 Future State books prior to this, so I got very thrown into this and was very confused for a bit.
This doesn't spin out of Future State. The Future State books was like an old Swamp Thing in the far future, and
right.
Obsidian showed up. So this is a complete fresh start.
Either way, I was a little confused at first, but very quickly was able to kind of get my bearings and understand what was happening. Where am I going from here? To me, at least, it kind of seems like they're going with Scott Snyder's idea about how avatars of the Green are made from the New 52, and like Mike alluded to, at least this probable first and or overall villain, this Pale Wanderer, seems to be either a part of or leading or something or another, the Black or the Rot, which, again, in my mind, kind of ties this to Snyder's New 52 run, which I am a little disappointed about because I just wasn't a huge fan of that run, and the way he kind of retconned how avatars of the Green are created and work. It just never really gelled with me. It never really made a lot of sense in my mind.
Yeah,
but that's kind of a discussion for a different topic. I do generally like that they are bringing in, they're using the Black or the Rot or whatever you want to call it, and you're going to have some of these elemental forces and stuff, in their constant struggle against each other to maintain balance but not overtake the other one. And I think that'll be nice. Personally, I'd really like to see some of the other forces, like stuff like the Melt or the Gray, but it's a very far-fetched wish for me. Very low chance of those really being just ever again a thing.
Well, it's only issue 1. We'll see what he incorporates in, but it is a 10-issue maxi series.
Especially knowing it's only going to be 10 issues, I'd be shocked if they talk. I'd honestly be even surprised if they talk about the Red at this point.
Yeah.
So just wishful thinking on my part. I just very much liked Miller's run, but the thing that really stood out to me was Perkins's art. It was fantastic.
Really good.
He does some great horror stuff, and not even better than that, but going so well in conjunction with that, his normal stuff just looks very normal. The normal scenes, normal.
They would say the best it's looked because he drew that one, the Lois Lane book that Greg Rucka was writing, and he has some weird face issues. Every once in a while, you get some pretty weird looking or inconsistent weird human faces. From Perkins, but which is why we were like, oh well, if he's drawing Swamp Thing, he's not going to have to draw a lot of human faces a lot. But for here, he completely just shined on that. This issue looked great.
Yeah,
that whole first issue. Yeah, that whole double page splash where it's all the vines coming out of Levi and everything, that looked great. But I think in conjunction with this, and I can't remember if Mike Spicer was coloring the Future State books, but the Mike Spicer colors here were also top notch and added so much that the scenes in the desert were perfect, and then combined with like the whatever was going on at like the lighting in the plane, and then the dark lit room that he was staying in there trying to sleep. It all had that horror vibe to it that was really, really good.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next and probably last point. I'm excited for this book. I like that they're doing horror Swamp Thing again, and they've almost certainly done it before, and it's just not something I've come across or like read a lot of. But I think it's very interesting that, and you brought this up, that they're kind of doing an Immortal Hulk vibe almost. But I think it's neat that instead of just doing pure horror, it almost seems like they're doing more like eldritch horror, and I feel like that's a very neat direction to take Swamp Thing in. So I'm excited to see how it pans out, and this will definitely be something I eventually buy and trade.
Yeah, this is going to look great in one of those DC deluxe edition hardcovers. Hopefully they include the 2 Future State issues in there, because it's 2 more issues. That'll bring it to 12, so that's perfect for a book of those sizes.
Right.
But if that's all we have on this, which this takes us to the retro book. Dan, you had the retro. It was February 1974 from DC, and you chose The Flash, number 225.
Yes. So our retro issue this week, Flash number 225 from February 1974, written by Cary Bates, art by Irv Novick, and inks by Dick Giordano. So our story opens to Barry and Iris watching a movie in a theater when a giant horse attacks them, which causes Flash to spring into action and save the people inside. He does it in a really cool way. Like the theater is collapsing, and he kind of like runs in, like throws everyone up through like a manhole and like out a sewer like opening and stuff like that. So kind of cool to see that. But meanwhile, in Coast City, Green Lantern gets a distress signal that Flash, who is a fellow Justice League member, is in trouble, and goes over to help him when he is attacked by the horse as well, and eventually rescued by Flash. So the two heroes find out that the horse is actually from 2473 AD. So not 2500 AD. No, we have to do exactly 500 years in the future, which really isn't even, I guess, I don't know. This was made in 1973. I guess it was. But and the two heroes have to travel to this time to discover that the horse's origins. Turns out that horses go extinct in the year 2473. And Zoom created these synthetic horses instead, which I guess go for a lot of money, and people are sought after them, right? So the two heroes find Zoom, Reverse Flash, which we want to call him, and agree to have Green Lantern steal what's known as the Raxilus wings that Zoom wants if Zoom goes back to 1973 with Flash and defeats the horse. So GL agrees. I guess a GL. Green Lantern agrees and runs into the Green Lantern from the 25th century, as he then steals the wings and tries to get away when he is zapped by the 25th century Green Lantern. So meanwhile, back in 1973, Flash and Zoom use a pretty interesting vibrating tactic, kind of vibrating off themselves to combine their speeds to overwhelm the horse and essentially knock it out. So Green Lantern returns to 1973 to return the wings to Zoom when they eventually crumble to dust. And obviously, what Green Lantern did is he basically kind of psyched them out, and I think he also brought back the 25th century Green Lantern with him to that time period. So Zoom escapes. The issue ends. This does not feel like a 1973 book, honestly. It feels kind of a little bit ahead of its time in terms of like pacing, and I don't know. The story itself is a little wonky, but like I feel like the art style and the way that the panels are laid out definitely feels a little bit ahead of its time. But I thought this was a fun issue. I mean, Flash and Green Lantern teaming up. Yeah, that just the fact that horses go extinct in 2473. It really makes me wonder, like, really, like, how long have horses been around for, and like, are they really going to go extinct in that time period? Maybe not. I don't know.
From my perspective, a lot of this book was like pretty nonsensical.
Yes.
And like knowing going into it that it was written in 1973, like I guess the art kind of backs that up, but like it's like weirdly almost a Silver Age story, and it's just like I don't know, it's in this like weird spot for me where it like doesn't feel like it belongs to any particular like age of comics, and I just like can't figure out what it's trying to do. Like it was a good story, I enjoyed it.
All agree on this.
It's just like so odd.
Yeah, it doesn't. The story's plot feels like it's from the Silver Age, but the modern pacing and layouts is definitely, at least from the layouts, it's Bronze Age DC.
Yeah,
but especially with Cary Bates. But it's drawn by Irv Norvik, who I know more from his Batman work, but it looks Silver Agey kind of. But then you got the Dick Giordano inks, which also places it still kind of like firmly for me in the Bronze Age. So yeah, and then like the hokiness of it where Zoom or Reverse Flash or Thawne, whatever you want to call him, because he's all of them at this point. They're not two different people yet. His power comes from his suit, which is something I forgot. He doesn't actually connect. He's not connected to the Speed Force. Of course, the Speed Force isn't a thing yet. But yeah, it's all kind of crazy. And it is interesting to note this is like the second Flash and Green Lantern team up we've read. Because we read one of their first ones earlier this year from a DC story from the 60s, and that definitely was in the Silver Age. So interesting to note how the different team-ups and the time changes over, especially like the Rexalis thing that Hal needs to get is yellow, so of course he can't because the ring is still ineffective against things yellow at that point in time too. So and then the other part of it too, which is also funny, is that Hal still has a secret identity, which modern Hal you don't have a secret identity. So it's all kind of fun things to look back on, and then you're just like, what is happening? What with horses? 500 years? Like it's a weird one, but like it was definitely a fun one.
I don't remember back to Dan's synopsis of it, but like not only is it weird synthetic horses from the future, it's weird synthetic horses or a weird synthetic horse from the future that can randomly boomerang your powers on you or something so that they just randomly go out of control. But if you just add two speedsters together, it's fine.
Yeah.
Odd book.
It's a very odd book.
Worth a read, I guess, but I don't know what happened. And this is more like a
too, which is what we read last week.
Yeah. Just a random observation I saw. It kind of interesting to me in 1973, Green Lantern, like at least going off of the some of the wording in like the narration and stuff, it seems like his ring is still like powered by magic almost. Like there's a couple specific things where it's like, oh, a quick illusion spell so no one sees him Green Lantern off the street or something. I'm like, wait, I thought the Silver Age made it not magic.
Yeah, it's interesting that you pulling that up. Like he maybe like it's just trying to write. They wrote illusion, but they meant like they used the ring as an illusion. It probably was that was the case, but obviously
I think like,
way.
Yeah, I think there were like a couple instances where I was like, are they like trying to say the ring is magic? Because I don't know a lot about Green Lantern history, but I'm pretty sure it isn't magic after Alan Scott.
No, it's not.
Yeah, weird book. I almost wonder if this was like some kind of like fill-in issue, or I forget the exact term, but like one of those ones they just like shoved in a in a file somewhere for like years, and then they're like, oh well, this one book's going to be late, let's just throw this one out. But like, oh no, wait, we need to like redo it because it never got finished, and they were just like, let's just go off the script anyway.
Yeah,
it like weirdly almost feels like that.
I can't imagine this being like a long storyline of giant horses from the future. You know,
I think. Well, what was selling you here was the fact of that cover. It's a pretty great cover with the Flash and Reverse Flash having to team up with Green Lantern caught in the middle. Like, you got to give it credit. That opening few pages that drew you in. You're like, all right, I want to know what's going on here. So that's what I always give these fun, like Silver Age kind of plots a credit for it, because there's always something crazy going on. You're like, all right, why does Batman have a multicolored costume? I gotta figure this out.
It's clickbait.
Yeah,
it's clickbait.
That's the way of putting it.
It's straight up clickbait from before the internet existed.
Yep.
From an entire couple generations pre-internet. That's exactly a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Not even to mention the ads that were in this book.
Well,
some of those are pretty interesting.
That's always the fun thing about reading old stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, picks of the week.
I gotta go Berserker #1.
Berserker, all right.
I'm actually gonna go ahead and say, where is it? I want to make sure I'm getting it right. Oh god. The Demon Days X-Men by Peach Momoko. I think it works very well as a standalone issue. And it's just really cool. I would say Swamp Thing, but I want to read more of it. And while that is a very good sign, I feel like I don't want to make an opinion about it until I do so.
Well, my pick's going to be the Swamp Thing #1. I was completely drawn in, and I want more. So there's your case on that one. But I'd also been looking forward to it the minute we finished those 2 Future State issues, because I was like, all right, Ram V's my guy to watch for in 2021. So, all right, guys, that's it for this week. Anything else to mention? Dan, do you have any pluggables?
Who, me?
Or no, Ginger Dan, our guest.
Pluggable what? Like
exactly. You have no pluggables.
Like a cord? I don't believe in social media.
Exactly, that's what I want. All right, we'll see you next week. Continue to stay safe out there. Have a good one. Have a week. See ya.